Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to set the stage. My question goes directly to Mr. Weston. Right now, we're not just going through unprecedented period of cost of living crisis. We have families going into your stores, looking at the price of items, looking at them and putting them back because they can't afford them. We have families that are struggling to buy food for their kids in this country, in a G7 country. And they look at you and they see you making record profits. How can you justify that when families are struggling to put food on the table for their kids?
Thank you. We feel and understand that 95% of Canadians are concerned about food prices. But grocery chain profits are not the reason for food inflation. And as I mentioned...
Profit is too much profit.
Well, so a company needs some degree of profit.
Record profits more than you've ever made?
Mr. Singh, I'm going to stop you there. Of course, your time is your time. And I can appreciate that, but we've invited, in fact, we've summoned these witnesses to come here. You ask a question, every member of this committee is expected to be able to hear the response. Certainly. And I need you to certainly be a little bit more mindful of making sure that is. I know it's your time, and I'll give you that discretion, but please don't cross lines here. So back to you.
How much profit is too much profit? You're making more money than you've ever made. How much profit is too much profit?
We're a big company and the numbers are very large, but it still translates right down to the bottom line at $1 per $25 of groceries. And if you consider our growth in profit in 2022 is 25 times lower than the unprecedented increases in costs that are being faced by the industry and by the world. And the fact that we have lower food price inflation in Canada than in so many other parts of the world is in part due to the high functioning of our food system here and in part to the meaningful effort that is being made by the grocery store industry to keep prices as low as possible.
With respect, Mr. Weston, you've mentioned this $1 per grocery bit. We can put a fact in front of you. Your company is making $1 million a day in excess profits. No one feels sorry for your profit margin when you're making $1 million, not just in profit, in excess profit a day at the same time that Canadians are experiencing the most unprecedented inflation in their lives. How can you look a family in the eyes and tell them that that's okay, what you're doing is okay?
I had a conversation with a customer in a store just the other day. She came to me and she said something similar. She said, how can you have such exorbitant profits? And I sat down, I didn't sit down with her, but we chatted for about 15 minutes and I explained, what I'm explaining here to the committee, and she understood. And she said, okay, I didn't realize that. That's not the way it's being characterized, when I read the Globe and Mail or when I read the Toronto Star. And I said, yeah. I said, look, all I can tell you is that this is the truth. This is what's going on. And if we if we didn't raise retail prices as costs went up, the companies that we operate would disappear almost instantly. And that's why this point about low profit margins is so important. 100% of the total profit of the industry could go into lower food prices, and the price of a grocery basket for that customer who I spoke to would still be $24. And that's not to say it's not important, but our ability to affect this change is limited. That's why we need all to work together.
How do you square what you're saying with the fact that you're experiencing
I agree with both sides here.
So how do you square that with the record bonuses that you and your colleagues are receiving?
Well, there's three things,
how do you
actually.
Square that with the excess profits that you're making per day? How do you square that with the record profits you're making year over year? How do you square that?
The first thing is that if you go online right now and you want to shop at like Shoppers Drug Mart, the price online is going to be different than the price in the store. Everything online is cheaper.
That explanation
and they'll tell you that if you go to the store. Now, however, Jagmeet, you're also responsible for his record profits because you guys gave shoppers a large contract for the government, from the government for COVID. They made a lot of money off COVID.
Able to influence. We stopped $500 million of unjustified cost increases, in our organization.
That's where you went and got your shots.
We offer the lowest prices in the market in our discount stores like No Frills and Maxi. No Frills is recognized as having the most trusted prices in the country. We ad match in our large store formats on every single ad that is available in the market so that customers don't have to shop around from one store to another to make sure they get the best value. We are actively losing money on core commodities, you know, milk, vegetable oil, butter, certain cheeses, and all kinds of items in every day of the week. So we are working hard on behalf of Canadians.
You've still not been able to answer this basic question. Then when a family that's struggling right now looks at your profit, you know, how much profit is too much profit? How much is enough? Like, you're making more than you've ever made ever. And you've not contradicted that point because we know it's true. How much profit is too much profit? At a time like this, when Canadians literally are saying that they are struggling, how much is too much then? Like, for you, is there no limit to how much profit you can make?
It's a free market system.
Canadians that are struggling because they can't afford the groceries,
market.
There's no limit?
Reasonable profitability is an important part of operating a successful business. I think at $1 out of $25 of sales, that's reasonable profitability, and it's worth mentioning. You know, big numbers. You know, in large enterprises like ours, you know, let's say our profit, you know, was in and around $1.9 billion last year. Very big number. Over $2 billion is going to be reinvested back in this country, back into supermarket, or back into new stores, new infrastructure, to creating jobs. It's not just about profit. It doesn't go to me. It goes back into this country. So if you have reasonable, profit levels,
actually, gentlemen, sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. I'll let you finish your thought, Mr. Weston. Unfortunately, we're at time. Mr. Singh, I even gave you a few extra seconds to try to make sure that was finished. Mr. Weston, if you'd like to finish out that thought. And then we're going to move on to the next round.
I would simply say that our profit levels are reasonable, and we are working hard to lower prices for Canadians in every way that we can. And the profit that we do generate, we reinvest back in this country to create more stores, more services, and more jobs. Thank you.
We're now going to turn to our second panel. I have Mr. Barlow for up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And again, thanks to our witnesses for being here today. And, you know, thanks to the leader of the NDP for being present at the Agriculture Committee. But I do find it interesting. Many of the recommendations that we've had from previous witnesses as part of this study have said part of the reason for food inflation is inflationary spending, lack of fiscal discipline, and uncompetitive tax regime like the carbon tax. But unfortunately, the leader of the NDP is completely complicit in those policies, which are helping to drive up the costs of food. So I'm finding it interesting that he's here today to try and fight this thing, but he's part of the problem. But to the witnesses, you had mentioned about the grocery code of conduct, and I do find it interesting that we had Mr. McCain here yesterday, and his comments were that it's really not going to have a lot of teeth once this is in. And certainly maybe from your perspective, without having Costco and Walmart, I didn't even think of Amazon, as participants in that grocery code of conduct, do you believe that it will have some validity or some pressure for the grocery stores to start to be more transparent? And yeah, go ahead, Mr. Medline first.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow, for your questions and your interest. I think unless we get everyone signed up, it'll be a farce. And I think we can get everyone signed up, and I think we need the help of the government to be able to do so.
Mr. Weston?
Yes. So the code of conduct can be a very positive, part of the industry, but it has to be developed in a fair and balanced way, and we're actively contributing to the conversations that are, hopefully going to get us there.
Sorry, and I don't want to forget Mr. LaFlèche.
Sure. So the more participants, the better. We're confident that most industry players will participate in the code. So I can't speak for other companies, but we all agree that the code will benefit from broader participation.
And I guess, Mr. Medline, you're quite forceful on this, and I appreciate your passion on the grocery code of conduct. But you were mentioning about the transparency. This will allow more transparency on the fees and fines, for example. Why do you think a grocery code of conduct is needed to do that? Can't the grocery chains do that on their own and be transparent with the fines and fees that they charge the farmers, for example?
Doesn't appear so. I wasn't in the grocery industry until 6 years ago, just over 6 years ago. I was in the...
Good decision.
Yeah,
I didn't think you'd have to be here.
Yeah, it's a great business, but and I get to see Parliament for the first time since I was a little kid, so I'm happy about that. But it's a serious matter, and you know, I came over from hard goods and soft goods industry, and where people would work together. They'd work together to have more innovative products, to take costs of the system, to serve the customer. And I came over to grocery, and I was shocked at how the interactions were and how the friction between what I call them supplier partners, but people call them vendors, and between the retailers. And I think it's hurting the industry. It hurts the trust in the industry. I'm all for fair, tough bargaining and negotiations. I'm not for unfair negotiations. And so, yes, I was outspoken on this issue because, you know, it was bothering me.
Yeah.
And you know, that was 2.5 years ago. I think we're headed in the right place. I think everyone's intentions are right. The supplier partners are behind it. We're getting more and more retailers behind it. And just ask the government, please help and keep boosting it. Thank you.
I guess I would ask all three of our witnesses here, and I think, as Mr. Turnbull said, we should try and compel Costco and Walmart to be here. I would ask all three of our witnesses here if you would table with the committee the list or the schedule of fines and chargebacks and fees that you charge the suppliers. I believe that would help us in the work that we are trying to do. So I would ask that you would do that. To Mr. Weston, you mentioned about the information that you provided to the Securities Commission. We do understand from the Competition Bureau yesterday or on Monday, they are beginning a study on this issue specifically. When you provide your economics, your numbers to the Securities Commission, is it and to the Competition Bureau, is it broken down to, as you mentioned, you're seeing some growth in those areas that are outside of the food business, you know, pharmaceuticals, clothing, you know, what other products you'd be making? Are those numbers broken down when you provide that confidentially to the Securities Commission and the Competition Bureau?
No, our financial results and our financial disclosures are public, and you can see them. The Securities Exchange can see them as they are published. I think the point I was trying to make was simply that we are held to a standard of accuracy. They have to be accurate. They have to properly represent what's actually going on in the business, and the comments and the color that we provide also need to be accurate. And so when we provide the color and commentary that we do, both written and in verbal statements, they can be relied upon as accurate. And that's all I'm emphasizing for the committee.
Mr. Barlow, unfortunately, we're at time.
Thanks,
I'm trying to be generous because of the nature of this meeting and the fact that we're all trying to get the information. But